Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned because you are about to see one of the most beautiful queen sacrifices in all of the history of chess. Now, this is the start of a super bit chess tournament, Rabbit and Bloods, and for today's video, we got Anish Giri playing with the black pieces against Noderbek Abdusattorov, also the Rapid World Chess Championship 2021. And here we go, the game starts with e4, e5, knight to f3 hitting the pawn, knight c6 protecting the pawn, and now pawn to g3 from Noderbek Abdusattorov. He is done with playing bishop to b5 and all of this theory on the Relopez or the Italian opening. So knight to f6 hitting the pawn, d3 protecting the pawn, and bishop to c5 putting the bishop on the most active diagonal, and also maybe threatening knight to g4. So bishop to g2 to protect that, d6, and now knight to c3 from Abdusattorov. If any knight to g4, he will immediately just castle and protect the pawn. And now with knight to c3, Abdusattorov is trying to go knight to a4 and capture this bishop on c5. So Giri noticed that and played a5. So if you played knight to a4, I will drop my bishop back to a7. And now h3 from Noderbek Abdusattorov. He is trying to eliminate any bishop to g4 or knight to g4 ideas. Now h6 from Giri, he is also stopping bishop to g5 and now castling from both sides. And now we get a position where Abdusattorov played king to h2 to free up his pawn so he could push it to f4 as it is the main idea of this opening. So Anish Giri, known with some exchanges, he played knight to d4. He is just trying to get the pieces out of the board. Knight takes d4 and bishop takes d4, and it's not really a smart idea to give your knight in this position because it's a closed position. None of the pawns has been exchanged. So now Abdusattorov plays correctly, knight to e2, hitting the bishop on d4. So Giri dropped back to b6, and now Abdusattorov goes on to his main plan, which is pawn to f4, which why he played king h2 in the beginning. And now Giri played a4. You gotta be careful in this position to play not a specific move, to not move your queen from this diagonal, because let's say you play queen to d7 trying to develop your queen. Now after this exchange and the sacking the rook, and after black takes it, then there is gonna be bishop to h6, and really the attack is going to be overwhelming for white, like g4, knight g3, and put the knight on f5. And the attack is super good for white. So in the game, Giri chooses to play a4, and now bishop to d2. The idea of Abdusattorov is trying to put the bishop on c3 to put maximum pressure on the pawn on e5, as it's not good for black to capture because white will recapture back with the g-pawn, and he will control this key square on e5. So now c6 from Giri. Giri is trying to put his bishop back on this long diagonal. Bishop to c3 hitting the pawn on e5, and now rook to e8. He is defending his pawn on e5, and queen to d2, finishing the development and connecting the rooks. Bishop to c7 from Anish. He is trying to put some pressure on this long diagonal, but it may take some ages to open this diagonal. Rook to f2 from Abdusattorov, and now c5. And you may be getting bored a little bit, but stay tuned because all the fire will begin shortly. So rook to f1 from Abdusattorov. He is doubling up on the f file, and now rook to a6. Giri is trying to defend with lifting the rook, and now Noderbek plays such a prophylactic move, and he just plays b3. And why the idea of the b3? Because Giri is pretending to play b5 and b4 and try to open up the queen side really fast. So Abdusattorov say, you know what, I may also want to be safe and be ready for any sort of attacks on the queen side. So b5 from Anish Giri, bishop to b2, and now a takes b3, a takes b3, and Giri fixes the queen side with pawn to b4. He is eliminating any choices of c3, as if you play c3 now, black will capture and you will lift up with some isolated pawns. And also Giri is putting the idea on rook to a2 and try to put pressure on the second row. So Giri here plays queen to c1, like before you attack my bishop, I will defend it. He is playing super prophylactic, but now he will just try to initiate the fire. So queen to e7, and now king h1 back. And why king h1? You will understand it shortly, because now Giri plays rook to f8, And now Noderbek tries to go g4. And yeah, this is the start of the fire. Like if your king was on h2 from 2 moves, if you go g4, then after captures and d5, you will be losing your rook on f4. So this is why he played king h1 in the beginning, and after rook to f8 he plays g4. Now knight to h7 trying to blockade this g5 move, and now knight to g1 as all of the pieces perfect, but this knight is not really great. Knight g3 could have been another possibility with knight to h5 or knight to f5 jumps, but Abdusattorov chooses to go to f1 to g1 to try to go to f3 and control h4 and go h4 and g5. That was his initial idea. So rook to a2 trying to put pressure on this bishop, and Abdusattorov says, you know what, actually the queen is not well placed on c1, so I will place it even worse at b1. But this is such a deep idea because after rook to a6, hello, the bishop has returned back, and now we are trying to pull some f5. But first of all, after queen to b1, rook to a8 has been played, and now he plays f5 first, and now the bishop is trying to say hello on this diagonal. So bishop to b7, trying to put some pressure on this pawn. Maybe he's trying to break the center with d5 to get some counter play, and now the bishop is just saying hello from c1, and you gotta be careful here. In the game, Anish plays f6, but f6 is really the only move holding black in this position. Like, for example, if you try to play rook to a6 to try to make the rook defend laterally again, then there is now bishop takes h6, and after you capture the bishop, then there is gonna be f6, and now the queen is trying to go from c1, like for example queen to e6, then queen c1, and the pawn on h6 is lost. Yes, the engine might say that is holdable for black, but it's super tricky in a rapid game that black can hold this position even in a super grandmaster level. So after f6, Abdusattorov tried to go knight to e2 back. He is trying to go knight to g3, knight to h5, as the whole h4 idea is now not really such a good plan because the queen is now blocked away from h4. So bishop to b6 is trying to go pawn to c4 and open up the bishop on this diagonal to hit the rook. Bishop to e3 from Abdusattorov, and all the fire will start really shortly. So bishop to c6, he's trying to maybe play queen to b7 and try to push for d5. And now h4, Abdusattorov is really trying to crush the king side with pawn to g5. Rook to a6 from black, and now queen to c1. You gotta watch out for these sacrifices. Rook f to a8, and right now bishop h6 doesn't really work because after g takes h6, queen takes h6, black can just play queen to g7 and he will consolidate his position, and when the dust settles, black is just up a piece. So bishop to d8 was played from black, and now bishop to f3. He is trying to rearrange his pieces a little bit. Queen to a7, and Anish is saying, you know what, I am dominating the queen side. I am the god of the queen side. I will try to go rook to a1, and I will crush you first on the queen side before you crush me in the king side. So queen to d2 was played, and now rook to a1. Let's try to make some exchanges. Yo, I am scared of your pushes, I am scared of your attack. Let's try to make some exchanges. So here Noderbek tries to go, you know what, you wanna exchange, you can exchange. I am going with knight h5, and I am insisting in my attack. So king h8 was played to prophylactic move. It's trying to avoid knight to f6 with check, knight to g7, and yeah, Anish is trying to play solid, and basically he is trying to not get checkmated, but maybe he will soon. I don't know. King h2, and now rook takes f1, and rook takes f1, and now queen to f7. Yeah, Anish is saying, you know what, I am really not confident about my queen sitting on a7. I will bring it back to defend our beautiful king. So rook to g1 from Anish, rook to g1 from Abdusattorov. Abdusattorov is really pushing hard to play pawn to g5 and try to checkmate. Rook to a2 from Anish. He's trying to put some pressure on this pawn. Maybe if this bishop moves from this diagonal, then there is gonna be queen takes b3. So Abdusattorov just plays rook to g2. Yeah, he is super slow, but believe me, when the fire starts, you're gonna see another player playing this game. So rook to a1, trying to pull some danger on the 8th rank. And now the whole fire begins with knight takes g7. A brilliant move. Knight takes g7, sacrificing the knight. just to crush the whole king side open. So if you really take with the king, then after bishop takes h6 check, if you return back to h8, then there is gonna be g5, and really this attacks and this pawn storm is super powerful. So Anish just took with the queen and tried to make his king safe as possible. But now bishop takes h6, hitting the black queen, queen to a7, trying to infiltrate on the queen side, and now pawn to g5. He is trying really hard to crush the king side. F takes g5, and now h takes g5, and now queen to a2 from Anish. And with queen to a2, Anish is really trying to put any pressure on Abdusattorov to try to stop his attack on the king side, and trying to put any pressure, any sort of pressure he can put and penetrate from the queen side. Like for example, he wants to play something like queen to b1 and try to checkmate Abdusattorov before he gets checkmated himself. And now Abdusattorov plays really nice move. G6, maybe it works here, but it is not such a good move. And why is that? Because you are putting your pawns against the color for this bishop. For example, if this bishop can sit on f6, then it will blockade your pawns on the dark squares. So it's not really such a smart idea to do that. And also Abdusattorov understands that, and he plays pawn to f6, and he is trying to go pawn to f7, and then he will go pawn to g6. And right now Anish is really trying to pull any kind of counter attack. So he plays queen to b1. He says to Abdusattorov, you know what, let me play queen to h1. Yeah, I know after king to g3 I may not have anything, but I might play queen to e1 back and exchange the queens. And Abdusattorov, he told him, you know what, that's in your dreams. I am playing rook to g3. I am preventing you from any sort of checks, and let me win this game cleanly with pawn to f7 and pawn to g6. Anish says, no, I will crush you. I will play rook a2, and now you've got problems on the c2 pawn. Like you will drop your bishop back, or you will drop your rook back. If you drop your rook back, then black may repeat the position with rook to a1 back again, trying to go for the same queen to h1 idea. And if you pulled your bishop back, then also black will repeat the position with rook to a1 and try to take the bishop. And after you move the bishop, he will just move back to a2. Of course, he will not just move back to a2. That's an idea maybe Anish thought of, but there is queen to h1 checkmate in 1 if you try to play that. So after rook to a2 in the main position, he is trying to take the c2 pawn, and right now Abdusattorov put the bullet in his head, and he played pawn to f7. And he says, you know what, I am trying to queen. Anish said, okay, rook takes c2. I am just gonna pin your queen to the king, and I will just take your queen. And yeah, I should be winning, right? And yeah, he should. And Abdusattorov here plays the really brilliant move, pawn to g6, sacking the queen. And you say, okay, rook takes d2, bishop takes d2, but now there is bishop to f6, and yeah, I will try to not get checkmated, basically. Like, there is a forced checkmate here with rook to h3 also, but it may be delayed with some moves of black, like maybe king to g7, but after rook takes h7, king to f8, then there is gonna be bishop h6, king here, and now you're just gonna promote with check and checkmate next move with queen to f7. So let's get back to our position. After rook to c2 and g6, I will shock you because I will tell you here white didn't recapture the queen, but instead white plays bishop to g2. Bishop g2 is really such a sarcasm move. And why is that? Because here in this position Anish Giri just resigned. And why is that? Because really the only try you can try is rook takes g2, try to get some checks, but after rook takes g2 you don't have any checks, and if you try to defend that with bishop to f6 right now, I will go pawn to g7, and after bishop to g7, bishop takes g7, checkmate, and white wins the game immediately. Thank you for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this game. Stay tuned for the another videos coming up.